All right, I'm here.
Oh,
Yo, thank you guys for your patience. I apologize for the delay, but welcome. I'm really excited to be here, and I can't wait to talk to Federico and chat with you all, and talk through rum. Category I think is unparalleled, and here I am. Federico, thanks for your patience.
absolutely. I'm hearing that some people don't. Maria, do you have any? Let me refresh the page just in case somebody cannot hear us. Will, are you hearing us right now? Oh, Monique, you can hear us. Okay, good. Will, you can hear us. Good. Everything's okay. Thanks, Niels. I appreciate that. Um, that's phenomenal. Let's go back to. All right, let's go on. So as I was saying, let me share today's our infographic. So this infographic is what is rum. It's very simple, basic. We've done different type of infographic throughout the year. Sometimes we focus about specific rum expressions, but at the same time, we're trying to do some infographics that are more generic and can guide people to learn about rum. Even though if you already know about rum, there's always something that we can refresh. We can share this document as well with our friends. The document is available at the rumlab.com. So I'm going to go really quickly through it. Talks about the history, stuff of how the process is made. It gives you some tips and guidance through history. Talks about even sailors and the importance of rum and sailors. Not the importance, basically some of the relation that it has. And it talks about rum classification. For today, we have, as mentioned, Shannon. She's back, which is awesome, or she's able to connect.
I'm happy to be here, guys. Good to see you all.
All right, let's go. Let me introduce really quickly Shannon and give a small brief about her. All right. So today's topic, as we know, is Can 101. What is rum? Our guest, Shannon Mustipher. I hope many of you have met her at some of my rum festivals or around New York. She's been touring around right now with her book. Shannon Mustipher. Shannon, you're from New York. Is that correct?
No, I'm not. Well, I've been there for more than a decade, and so the adage is that if you make it that long, you are from New York. But I grew up in Charleston and did high school in Atlanta. So I like to say I'm a Southern gal with a Northern lifestyle.
Okay. All right. Well, Shannon Mustipher is an author, spirit educator, and expert on the topic of rum and cane spirit. Since 2014, she has helmed the bar program at Glady's Caribbean in Brooklyn. Those of you that haven't been to that bar, is phenomenal. It's actually a really good restaurant. I'm a vegetarian, so I haven't tried the beef jerkies, but they say that it's amazing. And you can see people as they're eating it, they're very happy. Well, she's pouring pour cocktails and setting in ranging neighborhoods, pubs, and Michelin restaurants throughout the nation. Her first book, which is called Tiki, Modern Tropical Cocktails, was released in spring 2019. It's been a very big hit. Well, enough me talking. Let me really bring you to the screen. Shannon, 1 second, so she can say hi again.
Yeah, so, as Federico did an introduction, I've worked with Gladys Caribbean for 6 years, and that's how I fell in love with the category. Prior to opening a restaurant, I knew next to nothing about rum, and I think that's where the hospitality industry was in general. So if you went to most bars in New York, at least, you find Goslings, maybe Bacardi, one or two other bottles. It wasn't on cocktail lists. And so it was really gratifying to introduce a program that not only focused on rum, but really put a spotlight on traditional methods of production of Caribbean rums that show us the roots of why the category is so important, not only within rum, but in spirits and cocktails in general. And we'll dive into that.
Yes. Thank you, Shannon. Well, we just did a preview of the infographics. Hope you liked it. But now let's go to some questions. It's a lot of questions here. So what I did is that I broke it down per segment. And so you have an idea how we're going to work on it. So let's start with the. Okay, so Shannon, what is the? Let's hear this. All right. So these are the questionnaires, everybody, so you can see them as well. I'm gonna bring. All right, Shannon. Let's start with. Let's get it.
Bring it on. Bring questions.
All right, Shannon. And many of these questions are gonna sound very basic, but it's part of the whole infographic. We're trying to do something that is 101, right? Some people that are just are knowing about rum for the first time. So let's start. What's the main ingredient in rum?
Yeah, so there's no pardon me, guys. Ooh, I'm not sick. There's no overarching or universal standard apart from the fact that there's sugar as a base. So that could be molasses. That's the most common element. That makes about 80 to 85% of global production worldwide. It could be fresh cane juice, as you'll see in the case of rum agricole or claret. It is sometimes a combination of juice, of molasses, sometimes sugar crystals. It kind of runs the gamut, but that's the sole criterion. I have to point out that cachaça, though it is made from fresh pressed juice, differs somewhat in terms of the proof that it comes out the still. So it doesn't qualify as a rum in at least the U.S. According to our laws.
Okay. If anybody at some point wants to see the infographic in Zoom, you can let me know, and we can bring the Zoom. We can Zoom the infographic. So feel free, just write on the chat box, and then we'll bring it up to the screen. Shannon, question number 2 is let's see what we have here. So it says, who brought sugarcane to the Americas, and why did it become so important?
Yes, so historical records go in one of two directions. Christopher Columbus is credited with bringing sugar to Cuba in the late 1490s, but that industry did not take hold there until 1850. And we'll get back into that as we circle back to Cuba and Puerto Rico. Meanwhile, the Dutch were consultants on sugarcane plantations in Brazil starting around 1550. And they used their expertise to travel upwards to start the sugarcane industry and subsequently the rum industry in Guyana and later in Barbados. And, there were kind of two directions that was moving in, sugarcane being the common denominator, but sugarcane spirits, cachaça, and rum really getting more of a foothold in South America before it became a commodity in the Caribbean.
Wow, that's a lot more information that it says in the infographic, and that's the cool thing of bringing Shannon here, right? That she's gonna share her thoughts, her knowledge of all the things she's read and learned from different people. Shannon, as far as we know, which is the oldest rum distillery that is still operating as of today?
Yeah, sure. So the record holder for that is Mount Gay Rum in Barbados. Their trademark goes back to 1803, but there's evidence to suggest that they were actually a sugar mill as well as producing rum as a byproduct as early as 1750. Important to note, TMI, Barbados is a really great illustration in terms of how sugar and rum industry defined the Americas. There's statistics that shows that between 1730 and 1780, the country saw an explosion in that industry and went from having 8 sugar refineries to over 800, covering the whole island.
Wow, that's massive. 800 distilleries in Barbados?
It was crazy. Yeah, it was.
Wow.
It was nuts. Out of control.
Richard Steele was saying the other days that there was a lot there. I don't remember he talked about XYZ about distilleries, but he also mentioned that it was full of rum merchants, people that did not have distilleries, but they were buying bulk rums from different companies locally, and they were making their own rum brand. And I think, like, for example, Dorley is an example of that, which is really cool. I keep on learning so much through as I attend through the infographics. No, sorry, out of the live streams. All right, let's go to question. The next question is, when was the concept of the spirit rum first mentioned? What name did it have back then?
Yes, so I might be floating my dates, but there was a letter written by an English journalist circa 1637 where rum was called rum bushin, a hot and hellish liquor. So you have to bear in mind that prior to, and I got to go back to what you said earlier, Federico, prior to outside merchants sourcing rum to take back to Europe for blending and aging to create commercial products that put the category on the map, rum in the Americas and in the Caribbean was moonshine, right? So I'll cite some modern examples, and not to make a crude comparison, but look at something like rum fire. You know, it's coming off the still, whether it's blended and bottled around like 63, 67%. Look at rum Trois-Rivières, look at Mars from Grenada. They've not deviated from those earliest methods where there was no need to put the rum in a barrel because it was for local consumption. That was about 5 to 10% of production. Everything else was exported to Europe for blending, and that's how rum got on the map.
All right. Thank you very much. And thanks. I put it really quickly in the chat box just to make sure that our sound and visual is looking good. Shannon, I want you to know you're looking sharp over there. The quality is great.
I'm doing my thing.
So it's awesome. All right. And the next question is, why does rum have such a strong affiliate with privateers and pirates?
Yeah, I mean, it's important to realize that in the early Americas, products were currency, right? So sugar was currency, rum was currency, and by currency, I'm talking about a medium of exchange in lieu of coins or paper money, which were in short supply. It was a barter system, just on the verge of capitalism. So if you're a pirate, you got to get some of that medium of exchange, right? So you're intercepting ships and taking over the cargo and using it to trade elsewhere.
Yeah, and today, right? Today we've talked about pirates and privateers, but today most of the rum, the majority of the rum, travels around the world through barricades, right? And big cargo ships that are taking. So we still have our modern type of sailors, and so we don't. There is pirates actually in the Indian Ocean, but they're not taking rum. That I know of. Anything is possible. At least I haven't learned about that. So in the infographic, people, you'll see, or viewers and hearers, you'll see that we have an area called Rums and Sailors. It talks about a little bit about the importance of sailors, privateers from the past and today, especially sailors. And it talks about, it gives a reference on some names of pirate names that were extremely famous, and why some rum brands have used some of that names to market their product, right? Because spice rum actually is usually most of the available spice rum in the world right now has a relationship with pirates, or like a pirate name. And we know that Captain Morgan, for example, and it's interesting, the other days, I read an article that and I actually shared it on the Rum Lab newsletter that we send out every Tuesday, that spice rums in UK, the sales are just growing enormously, which is really interesting. I thought, I think anything that's helping the rum category grow is good. But I was amazed that spice rum was growing so big at the UK market. All right, let's go now back to Shannon. Let's bring her up to the main screen. Shannon, so let's talk about a little bit about production. We do know now that rum comes from sugarcane. Are there different ways rum can be made from the sugarcane stock?
Yeah, sure. So there's three broad categories which we're going to examine closely later on. But generally speaking, there's three. There is English style, which former colonies. There is French style, also former colonies of France, and there's Spanish style. In the English style, you have a hybrid of rums that are produced on pot and column stills and blended for a final end product. In Jamaica, they have retained more of the pot still culture, but it's important to remember that those rums were traditionally exported abroad for blending. And again, we'll go more into that. I want to talk about Jamaica a little bit. Their fermentation process made them iconic in that rather than what we do now on a mass level, where you have a 24 to 48 or maybe a 72-hour fermentation process, the traditional Jamaican approach, and this is true for everyone up until industrialization, you would do 2, 3, 4 weeks in open air pits with natural yeast. And what that would get you is a higher amount of esters, which are compounds that give aroma and broken down fruit notes, banana, papaya, we call it the funk, right? And so you couple that with the pot still and you get really intense and I would say a rum with a lot of character. And those rums were not bottled for consumption on their own. They were added to other blends. Later on, when you look at what Barbados were able to innovate in the mid-19th century, in response to the British Navy needing more volume, you start to see producers use a hybrid of pot and column stills to blend heavier, more character-driven rums with lighter, cleaner rums, and this is an efficiency standpoint. So as we shift into French-style rums, French agricole emerged in the 1850s as the sugar industry was collapsing, when Napoleon shifted to sourcing beet sugar over sugar from the Caribbean, right? It's less expensive. They were doing sugar as well as molasses-based rums called Grand Rum, and then it all shut down. So this is how this idea of making rum from fresh cane juice emerged. And in the best case scenarios, the sugar is cut, and within 6 to 12 hours, 24 hours at the most. I'm thinking like Rum GM. They have a really efficient system. You crush the juice, it goes into fermentation. That's 48 to 72 hours with a blend of natural as well as yeast that's specified for that. And there's a little bit of a, I would say they're borrowing a little bit from cognac. Ron Clement, you know, the gentleman that started Homer, was really into Armagnac and studied that prior. So the use of alembic stills and pot stills and a more kind of cognac finesse puts an influence on the philosophy behind alcohol rums that show where they come from. With Spanish style rums, what we're seeing on our modern market has a lot to do with the genesis of Bacardi, where the end goal was creating really clean, palatable, cocktail-centric rums. And so the column still comprises the bulk of what you see coming out of the Spanish style. It is based on molasses, and the fermentation generally is shorter because you're not looking for the funky, kind of heavier elements. You want something really clean and crisp. Unless you're going for the aged expressions, where now we're taking more of a winemaking, sherry culture approach to how you pick barrels and how you do Solera style and take liquids of various ages to come up with something that's uniform year to year and expresses the house.